Mom's Phobia, a night of terror and fear. Quick, let's get you settled in the lodge before sunset, commanded Mom. The sun was about 2 feet above the lake. I saw some bats flying above the tourist lodge. Luangwa National Park in Zambia is renowned for its rich diversity of wildlife along with ferocious exotic animals. The territory is notorious for the tsetse fly. A bite from the tsetse causes a slow motion death. I was in a state of mixed emotions. On one side was the lure of the panoramic lake. On the other was a fear of the wilderness. But Mom was just plain terrified. I guess there were too many what-ifs swimming through her high-functioning brain. "Relax, Mom," I said, smiling to reassure her. But my brothers, aged 13, 8, and 4, were in the mood to explore. They shook off her hand and ran towards the flimsy fence separating the land from the lake. My mom has a tendency of imagining the worst, so she was already physically exhausted. Somehow, she managed to get the 4 of us and our dad to march into the safety of the lodge. After a head count, she ensured the door was properly bolted and the curtains drawn. "Why does it smell like a hospital in here?" I asked. "Because I sprayed pesticide," snapped Mom. I wasn't allowed to open the windows, so I got busy reading a book. Soon everyone seemed to have settled down. Suddenly, we heard Mom shriek, "I've been bit!" All of us rushed towards her side to inspect the bitten hand. A tiny, almost microscopic hole was visible near her knuckles. Just then, Dad furiously sprayed pesticide in the air and around the window. A moment later, a fly dropped down in a semi-dead state on the floor. Very carefully, without touching the bug, he slid it into a tablespoon. To me, the insect looked like an albino version of the common housefly. I looked more closely and spotted a faint movement in the hind appendage of the bug. My dad, who had begun reading a guidebook on deadly bugs, looked worried. My parents exchanged anxious looks followed by silence until my mother could contain no longer. "I've been bit by the tsetse fly!" she wailed and began to weep. By this time, it was dark, and the rangers had warned us not to step out of the lodge at night. Doing so would mean exposure to predatory beasts. There are still 8 hours to daylight, and the nearest clinic is a 5-hour drive through the dense bushes. My mother was weeping hysterically, sometimes mumbling words I couldn't make out. Me and my sibling sat cross-legged in a semi-circle around her, in an extreme state of melancholy. She had begun blaming Dad for bringing her here. When will this night end? I wondered. After a long time, the traces of daylight began to appear, and we set out for the clinic, carrying the insect corpse in the spoon. At the clinic, the doctor observed the bite mark, which is now almost invisible. Then he shifted his attention to the bug. We waited breathlessly as he examined it. "It's not a tsetse fly," he said. "It's harmless." Despite the diagnosis, Mom was an insomniac for an entire week.